Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, on top of the world, really. After a solid weekend to essentially round off a good campaign, better than we anticipated. Because noticing, looking at what some of those the clips from the beginning of the season, our predictions for how we were going to go, how wrong we were, but in the best possible way.
In the best possible way, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, I was thinking it's been a couple of weeks since you've been on, so it's sort of, clinching automatic promotion and now clinching the title since your last appearance. So a pretty good couple of weeks for City. And I mean, look, we can't understate how significant or how impressive that title win is. First title in 55 years for City.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize. I didn't realize how long really it had been. And when you put it in that context, you're talking probably the majority of City supporters would have never seen the club win a title. So it's a great, even if it is only League One, it's a great accomplishment to clinch that title. Particularly with how poorly last season finished. But now, that's well and truly, ancient history essentially. So the boys have done exceedingly well this year, defied, expectations of just about everyone. So onwards and upwards.
Yeah, and look, I think that's the key thing that you've said there about defying sort of consigning last season to history. I think early in the season, I remember talking to Mike about what McCann had to do to win over the fans, and he sort of said, well, we could go undefeated this season, and I think there'd be fans who don't get won over. But I think the context in which we've gone up with that title secured before the final day, which can't be underestimated. I sort of said last week to Logan, we haven't had a promotion in my time following City that hasn't been clinched on the final day or in the final minutes of a season. Or in the case of 8 years ago this week, or yesterday really, actually after the final whistle with the Leeds goal at Watford kind of sending us up in 2012 or 2013, sorry. It's a remarkable achievement to have done it as early as we've done it and to essentially do it so comfortably. I mean, I was literally just saying to you before we went to air that, this week's episode, it's as much as it's a celebration of the season, and we talk about the Wigan game, we'll talk about the Charlton game, but traditionally we've been sort of focusing on games elsewhere and what our sort of rivals are doing. But it's a really weird feeling to not have any pressure whatsoever for this final game.
Yeah, it's probably a welcome relief from everyone to not be. We're not looking over our shoulders. We're not looking around to see what the chasing pack is doing and who's playing who, and none of those permutations matter anymore. So, but I think at the end of the day, that comes down to the hard work and the perseverance of the squad and the team, and being able to go out and keep performing at a high level. Now, I think my catchphrase has almost been, you're going to win games in pockets, and it's 4 or 5 games at a time sort of thing. And if you do well, it doesn't matter if you drop a couple of points, but if you can put little pockets together, then you'll be successful. And I mean, this little pocket at the end of the season, it's been pretty good. So what is it? We're now 14 undefeated.
I think, yeah. 12 wins in 14, yeah.
Yeah, something crazy. So, I think, even if we, the records that we've set already with this, and then I think if we having to beat Charlton, and then I think there's more records again which may tumble. So it's a record-breaking season, and it's just going to be good to be up in the championship again next season. So
yeah, and I think I think it was with yourself at the start of the season. I sort of fixated on, there was a comment from McCann about, sometimes you have to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. And at the time I was kind of frustrated with the spin on the situation, but, it does make next season in the championship a more exciting one. If we'd sort of scrambled and stayed up by the skin of our teeth last season to sort of be playing championship football again, we would have been essentially probably in another relegation fight, and then who knows, this season presumably again if we had managed to stay up. Whereas now there's that optimism heading into this championship season of actually where can we finish? And we'll sort of talk after the Wigan game perhaps on where we do think we can finish next season. But it sort of paints next season in a completely different context to what it would have been if we'd sort of just struggled along in the championship.
Yeah, I think, and I guess the other aspect of that is by going down and the players that we brought in or filtered into the team. I think, Keane Lewis-Potter probably still would have done well if we were in the championship. Would he have got as much game? Maybe not. Maybe they would have tried to bring a more experienced player in to start. So I think it's certainly benefit him. Jacob Greaves, undoubtedly. Like, if we're up in the championship, I don't see him starting all but one game or something this year, he's played a ridiculous amount of football.
Well, since he came into the team, I think he's only maybe missed one game. But because he was on loan at Cheltenham last season, I think, in League Two with Sheaf. So you think of the fact that presumably he would have had a loan spell in League One this season, and if we'd stayed up, and then who knows? I mean, either he has an okay season and perhaps then comes into the team, or we end up loaning him out or selling him or not renewing his contract or something like that. So a lot of sliding doors on the way the season went. And in a perfect world, you're not spending a season in League One, but there's a lot of positives to come out of the experience. And shout out to Cam, who we've got watching along, saying, glad I could catch this one. We are the champs, absolutely. And I've got to say, my biggest disappointment from the city coverage of the celebrations, which have been fantastic, haven't yet seen Honeyman belting out "We Are the Champions" to sort of tie into his new Freddie Mercury persona, but maybe that's still to come.
I think it's just on that it's a little bit ironic that the game against Wigan was the no social media one. So during the game, there's no social media, and it's the game that defined we become champions. And so there's the moments that you score. Surely the City's Twitter account dude is just sitting there going, "Can I? Come on, just let me. I gotta." So just I don't know. But
sorry.
Anyway.
I was going to just say, well, we can talk about the Wigan game now, since we're sort of starting to talk about it, and did score a couple of goals in that one. 3 goals, in fact, for KLP, Honeyman and Magennis. And I think the goals for Magennis and KLP took our front three, I wouldn't call it a partnership, our front three scoring group to 50 goals for the season, which is quite an achievement. To have 50 goals scored between 3 players is quite an impressive feat.
Yeah, that's I think we've touched on over the last few weeks, I guess, particularly with Magennis and Wilkes being so close to 20 goals and seeing whether we would be able to get anyone to that 20 goal mark. The fanciful proposition of having 2 players reach the 20 goal mark. But I think we've touched on that 3 players above 10 is is a really good achievement in itself. And to have that at 50 goals between the 3 of them is amazing. I think that puts us in, those players. I guess, we've seen that League One form doesn't necessarily mean that much in the championship with Eves. But I would hope that this opportunity that they've come down and they've spent the whole season together and building on that form and combinations and everything, that if that front 3 steps into the championship as it is next season, that I think they'll be a very dangerous proposition. They each have some really key attributes that make them individually really dangerous, but dangerous as a group.
And I think that's the key as well, that Eves obviously was coming into a new side, signing with us from Gillingham, but these 3 have played almost the entire season together as our front 3. Adelican and White and Eves have had spells in amongst breaking up that front 3, Crowley as well. But these 3 have been essentially our first choice front 3. So it means that, yes, it's a step up to the championship, but I think it means that they're as best suited as they can be. And of course, remembering that all 3 of them really were our front 3 last season in the championship as well. So they do have that experience in the championship. It's not a new league for them to go into.
Yeah, I think I'm quietly optimistic about. I mean, if we keep a hold of all 3, because that's always the danger. 3 high-scoring or forwards moving up a division that someone might come and try and poach them. But if we can hold on to the three of them, then I think we will. We should do pretty well next season.
And of course, the third of the three who didn't score did have a fantastic assist, which was just about my moment of the match. Was that fantastic back heel from Wilkes for Honeyman? It was interesting because obviously Wigan scored just after the Lewis Potter goal, and you sort of think, oh, we've sort of gone a bit early there, celebrating the championship, and then Wigan scored, and we could still stuff this up. We are City after all. But then Wilkes with a fantastic back heel for Honeyman, who just slams it into the back of the net.
Yeah, I think I don't know how Lewis Potter scores so many headed goals. He's it's like when I watch the Mariners and Nisbet is getting in there, winning all these headers, and he's 4'0". No, it's crazy. Like another really good goal from Lewis Potter, like just good smart movement and attacking that ball in the box, and just more desire than the defender that was much larger than him and was in front position for the ball originally. The Wilkes, the back heel was just, he summed up the situation perfectly. He took it in and then he sort of dragged it back towards the middle and saw the run coming and dragged in the second defender for just long enough and timed that back heel perfectly and placed it perfectly so that all Honeyman had to do was lash it home and straight through keeper's legs, I think. So it's just, I don't think he was stopping it. It was a bit of a rocket, low and hard. It was brilliant.
And look, and it was great because results elsewhere were going our way. Rochdale were losing, so it meant that Wigan didn't have to push too hard. It was funny. I think it was as injury time started at the end of the game, the Wigan keeper had the ball at his feet. And for a moment, I honestly thought he was just going to have the ball at his feet for the full 4 minutes, and both sides were just going to happily let him do that. Because honestly, it was that sort of situation where we didn't need to score any more goals. Wigan was safe. There was nothing to risk in the game in those final few minutes. And it is always good when the final whistle goes and both teams are able to celebrate the result.
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, I think you're right. It's nice when games can be that. A game that matters so much to both teams ended up in, with positive, I guess,
implications.
Implications for both teams. Even though we, had a winner and a loser. Wigan involved again, like last year. The big moment for us last year was was Wigan doing us over big time, and then we got a bit of revenge for that one earlier in the year, but.
We did put 8 past them this season, I guess, on aggregate, which was nice. Yeah.
So interesting the way it all sort of falls together. That it's Wigan again that we come up against. And it's Nigel Adkins when we get to lift the trophy, which is kind of fitting as well. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, again, just weird little moments that I think that'll be nice because Adkins he seems like a genuinely good guy, and he'll be genuinely happy for the players and for the club to finally to lift the trophy and get out of League One and to have had some success. Because I thought he'd done a really good job with us while he was here. I was actually quite sad to see him go.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, look, I'll give my 3, 2, 1, and we do have a few other topics. We've got a question in the chat, which is actually one of the topics that I wanted to touch on. So, I'll give my 3, 2, 1, and we can move on to that after this. So I've gone Wilkes for my 3, which I think is a little bit of a left field one. I think the assist for Honeyman, which is sort of the game was in the balance at that point, and as you said, he sort of summed up the situation, and it was a perfectly weighted back heel for Honeyman. And I thought. The last few weeks, he's potentially, he's not scored as many goals as he has earlier in the season, but his assists for Magennis, his assists for Honeyman on this occasion as well, he's really showing a more selfless side to his game, which I know for a lot of the season, a big criticism of his was his selfishness and his sort of tendency to shoot on sight almost. So sort of reward for effort for me is I'm giving Wilkes that 3 votes. Honeyman for the 2. I think, we are going to announce our player of the season probably next week's episode, wrapping up the Charlton game. But I think it's all but a formality at this stage that Honeyman's just been in the votes just about every week, has had a fantastic season and very well deserving of, EFL midfielder of the year, I think he got, which was great to see. And then Magennis for the one. I thought Magennis, another fantastic game, and really one of those players who's just had a sort of renaissance in the League One campaign.
Yeah, look, I don't even know if I can argue with you this week. Sometimes I try, but I from what I remember and from rewatching the highlights just before we came on, Wilkes was involved in plenty. You know, the back heel for Honeyman was sumptuous. Some really nice crosses and stuff as well. So I think he did a lot, and he probably deserved that. Honeyman is just eternally busy. I cannot comprehend how he manages to run so much and do so much and make good decisions so frequently. Because after 10 minutes in a game, I'm making poor decisions because I'm tired. So,
yeah.
And I think it's almost a flip of. I guess the 1 point would be a flip of a coin to me for Magennis or KLP. Because KLP, I think early on put a brilliant low and hard cross in for Magennis, which he put wide, which I'm pretty sure came off a defender. But yeah, and then so I might just to continue the trend, I'll disagree with you. I'll go KLP for one.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, we did have a question from Cam, which does sort of bring us on to our next topic, which was, speaking of strikers in the championship, we're probably going to replace Eves, but who with? And we did see the story or the reporting of a tweet from, I think it's Alan Nixon he's from The Sun, which I know is a sort of a not a very reputable paper, but at the best of times, but he is a reasonably reputable journalist himself. Sort of reporting on the fact that we've done a lot of scouting of Dean Charles at Accrington Stanley. I think 19 or 20 goals for the season for him now. He's 25 and, sort of most attractively is out of contract, so it would be a free transfer. Now, it's funny we're sort of talking about a replacement for Eves. It would be a very sort of similar way to how we picked up Eves, which was also as a free transfer. And we did just sort of spend the first few minutes of the podcast talking about how it's great that our front three have spent this season playing together. I mean, I've seen a couple of highlights of the guy. He's scored some tap-ins. He's scored some longer range goals. He's been, opportunistic. He's created a lot of chances. All the sorts of things that you'd want to see in a striker. But as we've said before, it is League One. Whether the quality translates to the Championship, I'm not so sure. But look, if it's a free transfer, if we're able to get to the front of the queue and sign him, not a huge risk and a reasonable reward if it pays off.
Yeah, I haven't actually been paying too much attention to transfer rumors for once. I've been too busy with work. But yeah, look, it'd be worth a punt for sure. I guess the other question, which you guys did you talk about this last week about which loan players you would? Yeah. So perhaps like you've always got the option of Gavin White, trying to bring him in on a permanent.
Look, I've been a long proponent of saying actually we're better off, and this was sort of before Magennis started to really hit his stride. But I was a big proponent of saying, well, why don't we just play with that front three of White, Wilkes, and KLP, and have that sort of smaller, more fluid front three rather than having a targetsman.
Which, look, for patch of this, there was a section of the season where that was our go-to, and that was the thing that was working. But whatever happened, Magennis, did he go? He must have gone away for internationals or something.
Yeah, actually, that's probably what it was.
That might have been what it was. He went away and then he came back, and he's just been a man possessed. He's been outstanding in this back section of the season. So, not really sure. I guess I think I wouldn't really want to pay a lot of money for anyone who's coming from League One up, because there's a couple of who's the one, the Johnson Clark Harris?
Clark Harris, yeah.
Yeah, there's another who scored a hatload of goals, but he's probably going to cost a Mozart, and I don't really think it's not worth it if he's coming from League One up to Championship where maybe not tested so much.
Yeah.
So,
not and the other sure one, Wyke at Sunderland, but again, as you say, it's that fee, and I think especially looking at a club like Sunderland with their new billionaire owner, I don't think they're going to let any of their players go on the cheap. So I think you're right that, and I think it's sort of a broader conversation. It is going to be a really interesting transfer window with the effects of COVID really being felt by a lot of Championship clubs, and whether we see any sorts of 10, 12 million pound fees paid for players. I think even the clubs dropping down from the Premier League will probably hang on to their money. just to retain the squad that they've got, rather than going out and splashing cash on sort of the Armstrong at Blackburn's probably one that could get picked up by a bigger club, but that could be a Premier League club. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting summer from a transfer perspective in terms of whether we're actually almost almost the most flush with cash, in the sense that, we've got that Bowen money that's still coming in from West Ham. I don't know if we've still got money coming in from the Maguire sale as well, but we're not in a position that a lot of clubs are in of these sorts of heavy losses from COVID.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting conversation. And why does this? I had something in my head and now it's gone. That's what I was thinking. What I was wondering about, say, like Adelakun, who got recalled from his loan spell with us this year.
I don't even think he's playing much. Yeah.
So, like someone like that who's been in the squad and shown that he gelled fairly well and was pretty dangerous sort of a player. I'm sure, if as long as he enjoyed his time there and he seemed to be going okay and getting great game time, then perhaps there's even the potential to approach someone like that to see if they'd be willing to come back on the permanent because he got recalled because someone got injured or something, but I don't think.
I mean, look, the interesting one with him and also with White, talking about the step up to championship level, is of course that White has struggled quite a bit at Cardiff, and it was one of the reasons that we were able to get him on loan. So there is always that point that there's a reason that guys like Adelakun and White were being loaned out to us in the first place. So the other opportunity, of course, is to look even higher and try and get a Premier League player in on loan, and then sort of do what we've done last season this current season with a championship player, and instead do it with a young Premier League player. We were just talking in our chat a couple of hours ago about Harry Wilson. Obviously not suggesting we'd be able to get him, but a couple of years ago we sort of plucked him out of Liverpool, and he had a fantastic second half of the season for us. So whether we find an equivalent sort of youngster at a Chelsea or a Liverpool or an Arsenal, and take them on loan, is another option, and it's another reasonably cheapish option.
Yeah, I guess because we've been down in League One, it's something I didn't even cross my mind that we would even be able to approach Premier League players or Premier League teams, and be taken seriously. So I forgot. Yeah, we'll be in the Championship next year. So yes, that's certainly an avenue that I think actually I really like to see explored, because I think we've certainly had some misses, but I think we've had quite a few good players that we've borrowed or had on loan from some of those Premier League clubs. I think particularly Arsenal, we've had quite a few decent kids come through, come on loan from Arsenal. So,
and even Regan Slater this season from Sheffield United. I guess it's essentially, it's funny because you sort of think Sheffield United are a championship club now, but it was a Premier League club when we got him on loan, and he's had a very strong second half of the season. I think he was one first half of the season that we probably looked at as a miss, and he's really turned that around.
Yeah, I think he's another one that just really grabbed that opportunity that was given to him with Smallwood's injury, and I think he surprised us. I remember that first game, and we were like, "Oh, I'm not sure how this is going to go with Slater in there," but he just threw everything he had at that game and really impressed. And then it sort of became well, can he back that performance up? And he did it again and again and again. So.
And look, I think on the weekend it was probably the starkest illustration of it, because Smallwood actually started the game against Wigan in place of Slater, and then Slater came on, and we actually looked better with Slater on than Smallwood. It was the starkest sort of comparison of the two, and Slater came out on top.
Yeah, to be honest, I guess he is club captain and all of that, but I'm actually unsure why we bothered. Not that he doesn't deserve, but I sort of am he had a decent sort of an injury, and there's 2 games left in the season. Maybe they're not they obviously they didn't rush him back, but what is the real benefit in to bring him back for 1 or 2 games when you could essentially just be dude, just rest.
I wonder if part of it was probably him saying something he wanted to be part of the promotion effort, which is also an interesting reason that I was surprised that Burke hasn't been thrown back into the side in the recent weeks, because I think being essentially our longest serving player now, you'd think and maybe look, he might get a run out against Charlton on the weekend, which we'll talk about in a second about, there's a lot of sort of romantic sort of team selections that we could make for that game. Look, so maybe that's the reason. And I think there's probably now a question for Smallwood on next season on what his place in the squad looks like, whether he's sort of there for the character in the dressing room maybe, but I don't quite know if he'll sort of still be in that first 11 spot in the championship. He did have a fantastic first half of the season. We can't forget that too quickly. But, you look at Honeyman, and he almost seems the more natural heir apparent, I guess you'd say, for the captaincy. Him or Coyle, really. I mean, we've got a couple of really good options on the field as potential captains now.
Yeah, I think I think that's been what's essentially has made what has developed within our team that's made us so strong and so successful throughout the season, is that we weren't, maybe perhaps early on it was sort of one or two voices, but slowly built and with more experience and everything, that we have quite a few really vocal players and strong leaders within the squad. I think you see, like, Magennis is insane. I watch every time Ingram makes a save, like off a corner, Magennis is there congratulating him. Every time, like, whatever, anyone scores a goal, Magennis is straight over there to congratulate. And they're the sort of like characters and leaders that you need to really like drive your team forward. And so between him and like Honeyman, Smallwood, Coyle, you've got 4 or 5 really big voices, which I think is crucial to especially the development of some of those younger players like KLP, but just like generally in making you a successful team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the squad looks like next season in that sense. Speaking on the whole for next season, then just getting a very rough, very early sort of sense of things from you. Where do you see, what do you see next season looking like? Do you see next season as just being about consolidating a place in the championship? Do you see it as the potential sort of tilt for the top half or playoffs? Do you see it as a tilt for the automatic spots, or what's your sort of optimism or caution coming into it?
I'd like to think that we'd have a good crack at it. I don't know about automatics. It's probably going to be very similar predictions to what I said for this year, and hopefully they can be proved equally as wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I think automatics, again, will be sort of beyond what we'll be able to achieve. But I actually see no reason. I feel more optimistic now about like the squad, having seen what they can do. I don't really feel like, I feel for a lot of the season, it felt like we were sort of playing against teams that were a league below us.
Yeah.
It really felt like there was lots of games where we absolutely dominated and played really, really high quality football against teams that were essentially playing Route 1 or like counter football. So I think we'll go really well next year. And my most pessimistic view is like a mid-table, sort of like lower mid-table finish. Honestly, that's my most pessimistic prediction for next season. And my optimist in me is saying that I think we can push for playoffs.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at sides like Barnsley, for instance, who are now in the playoffs in the championship. You look at other sides in the championship who've really pushed on, and you look at sides like Derby and Sheff Wednesday who potentially drop out of that championship. I think the sides coming down, yes, I think Fulham and West Brom could be quite dangerous sides and are probably going to enter the season as favourites to go straight back up. I think if Bournemouth don't go up, they're another interesting one, though I don't know how much they're going to have to shed in terms of wages. But I look at Sheffield United, for instance, and I don't necessarily see them as, the kind of mammoth Premier League fallen side that some sides could look like upon relegation. So I think it'll be a very even season next season. And as you say, I think there's no reason that we can't at least be aiming for mid-table. I think it's easy to forget that before Bowen and Grzycki left, we were 1 point off the playoffs with, broadly speaking, the squad that we have now. I'd say even a weaker squad than we have now. We had Lehigh at right back, who, no disrespect to him, but he was fine, but he wasn't an outstanding sort of fullback that we've lost. We've now got Coyle and Emmanuel as sort of depth. we brought in Wilkes, who had an okay end to the season in the championship, but he's certainly developed as a player. We've got KLP, who's developed as a player. We've got Magennis, who's now in the form of his life, which, yes, he might not bag as many goals in the championship, but he's kind of coming in with the best possible form for that opportunity. We've got Honeyman, who's suddenly developing into a fantastic player for us. And I think I've sort of said a few times, I think a lot of how we go next season will hinge on his ability to take that step up to the championship and to continue to perform at this sort of level that we've come to expect from him. The big one for me as well, I mean, I was listening to an interview just before with Greg Docherty sort of saying that Grant McCann had been sort of in his ear or talking to him before the championship season even finished. And part of the reason he was sort of convinced to join City was that McCann was sort of indicating he was a player that he wanted in the championship. And there was that sense that, yes, we've dropped to League One, but even if we're able to get promotion back to the championship, Docherty is still sort of one of the first names on the team sheet. So look, there's Alfie Jones is another one. There's these good quality players that we've now brought into the side that I think actually makes us in some ways a much stronger side than our last championship season.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing that all this hinges on is what acquisitions or consolidations we make in that transfer season, because Alfie Jones is on it's just a one-year deal, isn't it?
It's a 1 year deal with the option for a second, but I'd certainly
okay.
hope that we sign him to like a 2 or 3 year deal now.
Yeah, I'd be absolutely confident in renegotiating that as a long-term deal and not just taking the option. I guess you see who wants to depart. I think there's some rumours circling about Long going elsewhere, perhaps in search of first-team football. Now that Ingram's firmly established himself as the number one here, but again, who knows what happens over the off season, because it seemed like at the beginning of the year that they were both just given, they got their opportunities, and it was whoever impressed at the time, and you would essentially hope that the same is done again next year, that Long and Ingram get the chance to fight it out and prove themselves in pre-season. And if it is Long, if he does decide to go elsewhere, then good luck to him. We'll find someone else.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But I think you're right in terms of the general quality in the squad. That I don't who was that? Who were in our midfield last season? I can't even remember.
Well, it would have been like Irvine, Stewart, and Honeyman for bits. But then I'm probably forgetting a really obvious name here. There's probably Lopez as well. A few guys like that. But it was fine, but it didn't feel as dynamic as it does now.
I think Docherty's a very, very smart acquisition. He has proven himself, and actually just like improved and improved and improved. He was really good at the beginning of the season, and he's like just on a whole other level now, like with his work rate and the things that he's managing to do, just his involvement within the squad. Now, I guess he's just figured out how best he can help the team within a game. So I think I see no reason. I have no hesitation in saying that he will step up to the championship and manage that fine. He just seems like he's a tough dude, and he'll manage it.
And he's one of those guys. He's got the engine as well, which I think it's the same as Honeyman now as well. They've both got that sort of engine where even if it's not as if they're going to step up and the speed of the championship or intensity is going to sort of overwhelm them, because I think they've got the ability to sort of push through games.
Yeah, they certainly do. I guess that question mark, which you sort of mentioned earlier, is in that holding midfielder. Whether we are we going to try and get Slater back on a Pona, because I think he'd be a player who would probably actually would relish the opportunity to go again in the championship and play regular, and I think he offers a little bit more of that dynamic, really like that engine, hardworking engine than Smallwood. Even though Smallwood does a really good job, I think Slater would probably offer us a little bit more in the championship. But if not them, I think that
Jones, you could slot back in there as well.
That's true as well. Maybe we don't need to strengthen there at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess them. Yeah, It becomes a somewhere in that centre half or centre mid is probably
Yeah.
the main sort of spot that needs probably like just one or two. We only really need one or two smart signings, probably a forward and then someone in that defensive
Yeah.
zone, and you just about don't have to worry much else. I think we've
And
got a
and
really
sometimes,
solid squad.
yeah, and sometimes I think not making acquisitions is actually better because you upset the harmony of the squad if you do that. I mean, I remember in the second Premier League campaign, I think it was McShane who came out and sort of half jokingly was saying, you know, he hoped that there wasn't any new faces coming through the doors anymore because we were just signing a player every couple of days, and we brought in, you know, Dawson and Maguire as centre backs, and all of a sudden, you know, you go from having 3 or 4, you know, fit, you know, first team centre backs to having like 5 or 6, and all of a sudden the players are going, well, hang on, I've just lost my spot in the team. You know, guys like George Boyd and Stephen Quinn, who are sort of heart and soul of that side, were getting pushed to the side. And I think there's a lot to say about kind of keeping that squad harmony going. And we've got such a solid core of the squad now. I don't see the need to make 4, 5, 6 sort of signings. And, you know, talking about comments from the preseason, one of my big ones was about the revolving door of players and not having that sort of solid core and solid squad. And I think we finally got that. We've got a squad that we can really sort of be proud of and get behind. We don't need to overhaul it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of my the peeves of the alums is that contractual nightmare that they end up leaving, where we will have a bunch of players all come off contract at the same time and negotiations are done poorly. So I think we've talked about it earlier in the season, but I've forgotten. But hopefully we're in not too bad a position coming to the end of the season that there's not too many crucial players that are coming off contract.
I think there's only 5, and one of them's long, so it's, you know, essentially 4. I think it's Burke. I was talking about it last week. It was Burke, Jones, Clark, obviously, and maybe Magennis. And I think we've got options for all of them that we, you know, worst case scenario, we extend for a year sort of thing.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a good situation to be in, and tying in, just following on from your comments about, you know, that squad unity and keeping and that cohesion and keeping the squad together. So I think, I think all of these points are going to hopefully work in our favor next season and this weekend.
It's a good segue. I was about to say, well, let's finish off then just with a quick roundup for the weekend. Not a whole lot riding on this game, so not a whole lot to say on it. Sort of already said, you know, it's gonna be really great to be able to lift the trophy. Adkins will be there. I'm sure he'll have some really nice things to say to the squad. He'd know, I want to say maybe half of them, a fair chunk of them from his time at the club. So there's still that connection there, which is great. A few names that I'd even forgotten about. I think Mike was talking about today. I'd forgotten Jordan Flores was a football player in our club.
Well, he's only played for about 40 minutes.
Yeah. You know, we signed him, and it was an okay signing at the time, but it's just been completely forgotten about. But, you know, guys like him, Max Clark, of course, giving him sort of that, you know, that game for his hometown club in our promotion season. Don't know if he'll be back next season, but would be great to see him get a run out. But Burke back in the lineup sort of for that send-off for the League One campaign as well. You know, whether we do rotate and sort of get a look at those players that we're sort of umming and ahhing about re-signing or giving a contract to, and seeing how they go in one final game, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I guess it's going to be up to. It'll be an interesting conversation between, you know, McCann and the players about how they want to approach this final game. Do the guys who have done the job all season are they willing to, I guess, take a step back and let everyone else have that final run out? Do they get to savor that last game on the sideline, or do they want to be out there in amongst it? And I dare say quite a few of them will want to be in amongst it. But yeah, I think there certainly is. Now that it's wrapped up, there's no pressure on this game.
I'm sure Wilkes and Magennis will both be eyeing off the 20 goals, I reckon.
Yeah, well, we'd have to win about 5-0, I think, though, wouldn't we? Well, we'd have to score about 5 goals, sorry.
Well, so hang on. So how many is Wilkes on? I thought they were both on 18 or 19.
Oh, are they? Oh.
Yeah, okay. I thought they were both on. Yeah, I'll have a look. But yeah, look, if they're both on 19, I reckon they might both want to give it a crack.
Oh, Magennis is on 17, but I
Oh,
don't know if
okay.
that's any cup. Wilkes, it's got Wilkes is 22, but there's a few in there, so it's
Yeah, that'll be
yeah,
cup as
he's
well, I think.
cup games. Um, so Magennis needs a couple.
He
So
must,
yeah, it'd be
yeah, Magennis must be 19 in all competitions, maybe. Yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah. He's 19 in all competitions. He's on 18 in the league. Wilkes is on 19 in the league. So
Okay,
they
so
could they could both get there
they,
in a 3-0 win.
they could. That wouldn't that be an end to the season? Have two players crack the 20 goal. Um, but I think there's an argument to be made that to give some of these guys a run out and to experience, I guess, to feel maybe like they actually are a part of this
Yeah,
like this championship run in. It's weird to
yeah,
say
yeah,
championship when we're going up to the championship.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it'd be. I wouldn't even mind. I guess Emmanuel is another one who's
Yeah, it's a
not
good
played it.
shout.
He played quite a lot in the first half of the season while Coyle was injured and suspended, whatever. And then he just sort of dropped. I don't even like.
I
We
think
were like,
he's
yeah,
come on a couple of times, but yeah, he
mm.
hasn't had huge
it
involvements in
was
games.
it was just really interesting because I remember like we were like, oh yeah, Emmanuel, and then one day it was just like Coyle starting, and we are like, what? And then every like forever since
Yeah,
then it's just been Coyle starts, and it sort of came out of nowhere, but. Um, I guess McCann saw something in
and
what was going on and picked it sort of right.
yeah, it felt like one of those ones where it was a really hard decision to make, and then it was basically, well, I'll pick Coyle, and then we kept winning, so I'll keep picking Coyle, and then it was like, well, I can't drop him now. Like
Mm.
it was the same logic that was giving Emmanuel plays, which was, well, he's in on merit. Can't drop him just for the sake of it. And then Coyle was in on merit, and he couldn't just drop him for the sake of it. And if we'd had a real bad lull in form, it was similar with Long, who came into goal for Ingram for a patch as well. But if there'd been a lull in form again, I suspect that Emmanuel might have gotten a chance again at some point. I know we were sort of experimenting with him up forward, so who knows? Maybe he'll convert him into another backup winger next season.
Maybe he's got the skills and the power to do it. So yeah, I guess bring. It would be nice. It would really be nice to see Max Clark get a game. The homecoming and all that would be nice to see. And yeah, I don't know. Even I wouldn't even be opposed to throwing in some of the younger kids as well,
Yeah,
or off the bench or something, just like to.
Callum Jones, who got a couple of looks in start of the season, but has sort of faded out of it.
So yeah, don't know. It'd be an interesting one, but I think don't know. Well, I actually I think we'll win again, and we'll set some more records, and be a good end of the season, and
I
fingers
kind of
crossed
almost,
that Callum
yeah,
Elder gets a look in for the Socceroos in a month or so.
yeah, that will be a very interesting one to look out for. He did get Defensive Player of League One, so he's picked up a couple of plaudits himself as well. Got in the team of the season as well. So will be very interesting to see if he can work his way into the Socceroos squad for sure. I was just going to say, I almost kind of don't want to win, because I think if Adkins can get the win for Charlton, it puts them in the playoff places. And I do have that big soft spot for Adkins. So I'd feel bad if we win the game when it doesn't mean anything. You think back to previous seasons like that, like the game we were talking about, the Charlton game against Cardiff game against us for promotion back in 2013, where they were up, they had secured promotion, and they went 1-0 up, and I'm just sitting there thinking, why are you trying? It doesn't matter for you. Just let us win for our sake. It's very frustrating being on the other side of it. So I'd love to win. I'd love to set a few more records. I'd love to see Wilkes and Magennis get to 20 goals. But if we were to lose, I don't think I'd be too bothered.
So we're aiming for a 5-4 loss then.
Yeah, look, knowing Adkins, we were talking about when Wilson was in the side, and we had those 5-5 draw and the 5-4 win over Norwich and those sorts of crazy games, which I think that was under Adkins. It wasn't under Slutsky. You never know. Could be a 5-4 sort of loss. Would be a pretty crazy end to the season.
It would, and we'd still get to set some records. Charlton would potentially reach the playoffs, and we'd still finish champions. So
yeah.
Maybe that's the perfect end of the season.
Could be the perfect end to the season.
Magennis needs two for Magennis, another one from Wilkes, and then whoever wants the third one, the fourth one, sorry.
Probably Honeyman or someone. Yeah.
Or do we just, or I mean, why are we greedy? Just go with a 4-3. We'll probably get the same result, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, hoping for a 4-3 in that one. And look, it's going to be a great end to the season regardless. So thank you for joining me this week, Dan.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to come on when we've been crowned champions.
Absolutely. And look, we're looking forward to, we'll do a full season review probably next week or else the week after, just depending on, it'd be great if we can get a couple of the guys on to round up the season. We'll, of course, crown our player of the season at the same time. We've been doing our 3-2-1s each week as well. So be sure to tune in for that one. But until then, got one game to go. Come on, City.